Right now, in your heart, either Christ is on the throne and you are on the cross, or you are on the throne and Christ is on the cross. Either you are dead to you and you're surrendered to Him, or you are dead to Him and you are surrendered to you.
Hope and encouragement for life. Hope and encouragement for life. Touching lives.
In one of the most transparent, candid passages in all the Bible, Paul said this about himself in Romans chapter 7. He said, I don't understand what I do. For what I want to do, I do not do, but what I hate, I do. If you're having trouble losing weight, that's your verse. I mean, that's really your verse. What I want to do, I do not do. That is, I want to lose weight. I don't want to eat the pies and the cakes and the sweets, but what I hate, I do. Paul said, I've got that problem. He openly admits there are times I lose self-control. We're living in a culture that, in my opinion, is increasingly out of control. I mean, you think about it. Road rage, frivolous lawsuits, teenage pregnancies, disintegrating families, increasingly out of control. And I want to be honest, you're not going to be motivated through this message to even try to get a hold of some problems you're having right now unless you really begin to understand the consequences of being out of control. Proverbs 25:28 says this, like a city whose walls are broken down is a man who lacks self-control. Back in Bible days, the only defense that any city had was the city walls. They would always build these giant walls around the city. And anytime the walls fell, the city would be absolutely defenseless. And what Solomon was saying was, if you don't have some walls of self-control built around your life, if you don't have some walls of self-control built around your emotions and built around your mind and built around your heart, an individual, a family, a city, a state, even a nation, it will be completely defenseless and easy prey for the enemy. And I'll tell you something else you know. Anything that you've ever accomplished in life that you're proud of, you had to exercise self-control to make it happen. It doesn't matter what it is, playing a musical instrument, mastering a computer program, learning a foreign language. Any endeavor like that demands self-control. That's why maybe Aristotle said, self-control is the hardest victory you will ever win. It just is. As a matter of fact, it's just this simple. If you control self, you win, but if self controls you, you lose. Now, let me just kind of get all this in a package here, and then we're going to unravel it. The problem a lot of you have, and the reason why you're so frustrated with the fact that you're not really in control of your life, the reason why some of you do know there are parts of your life that are totally spun out of control, is because you've got this idea that self-control is something you do by yourself. And I just wanted you to hear this next statement. You cannot control yourself by yourself. You can't do it. If you try, self will win every single time. Self-control is something only God can do through you. So this is what I want you to take out the door this morning when we walk out of here. If God is in control of you, then you can control you. Now, you got no shot without God. I'm telling you right now, you will lose to you every time. But if God is in control of you, then you can control you. So I want you to look yourself in the mirror right now. I want you to put an imaginary mirror in front of your face, and I want you to ask yourself an honest question. Who's in control? Because the truth of the matter is, there's only one of two answers to that question, you or God. Take any of your life. Let's take your finances. Now, who's in control of your finances, you or God? Let's take your attitudes. Who's in control of your attitudes, you or God? Let's take your emotions. Who's in control of your emotions, you or God? Let's take your calendar. Who's in control of your calendar, you or God? Now, so that raises the big question. Well, how do you get you under control? And since we're talking about self-control, we're going to use the word self to refer to you. How do you get you under control? How do you use self to get how do you get self under control? Well, we're going to stay right here in Galatians 5 because Paul does something that's really kind of cool. He takes the very last fruit, which is self-control, and he tells us on the front end of the passage and the back end of the passage exactly how to get self under control. We're going to see that this morning. You may want to turn over your order of service to the back, write down these three things. He said, here's the first thing you got to do. If you're here this morning and you'd be honest and you'd say, there is some part of my life out of control. Let me give you an example. If you have credit card debt that you're not paying off at the end of every month, your finances are out of control. If you're always worried that your month is going to last longer than your money, you're out of control. If you are living in sin right now, you know that you're living and you're doing things in your life that you know God would disapprove of, but you do them anyway, you are out of control. So the question is, how do I get self under control? All right, number one, and we already kind of started doing it already, you have to confront yourself. And that's the first thing you got to do. Because the first thing you've got to understand is that this battle that we all have, and everybody's got it, this battle that we all have to get self under control, it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden. I mean, that's why we're in this battle. I mean, you do understand, I'm hoping, I sometimes take this for granted, you do understand the reason why the world is in the mess it's in right now is because of two people named Adam and Eve. You understand that. God put Adam and Eve in a perfect environment. God put them in this unbelievably beautiful garden. And he gives them all, I mean, everything was theirs to enjoy. They owned it lock, stock, and barrel. And God says to them, all this is yours. All belongs to you, all free of charge. You can have anything here you want. Eat it, enjoy it, take it. God bless you. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas. But you see that tree right there. Don't touch that tree. Everything else is yours. Don't touch that tree. Now, you do understand that if Adam and Eve had just left that tree alone, everybody would have lived happily ever after, right? You got that? But the one thing that God said they couldn't have, you don't even get out of 2 chapters. There they go. The one thing God said don't touch, they took. The one fruit God said don't eat, they ate. And from that moment on, we were all born with the same problem that causes self-control to be such a battle. Paul calls it in one word, the Bible word for it is flesh. It's what in my version is called sinful nature. But it literally translated, it's flesh. For notice what we read now in chapter 7, verse 17 of Galatians 5. He says this, for the sinful nature, that's self, that's flesh, desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the sinful nature. In other words, he says, the problem of self-control is you want one thing, but God wants another. You want one thing, but the Spirit wants another. He said, that's the problem. They are in conflict with each other so that you do not do what you want. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under law. Now, what Paul means by that simply is we were all born with this sinful nature. We all came out of our mother's womb wanting our way, satisfy our needs, put ourselves first. I mean, even before we're even old enough to realize it. If you have a newborn, you know what I'm talking about. When your newborn wants to be fed, mama, that newborn doesn't give a rip how tired you are. That newborn doesn't care how little sleep you've gone on. And that newborn is not going to shut that newborn's mouth up until you give that newborn what they want. Because we were all born with that capacity. We want what we want when we want it. We want to have our way, get what we want, satisfy our needs, put ourselves first. It's what scientists and sociologists call the animal instinct. Call your own shots, do your own thing, look out for number one. And by the way, even after you become a follower of Jesus Christ, this nature is still in you. Even after you give your life to Jesus Christ, and this is the thing that's kind of frustrating, you find you still have that desire to do the one thing that God says don't do, to take the one thing that God says don't take, to go the one place that God says don't go. And if you want to see the results of a society out of control and the results of a culture where self is in control, just listen to what Paul talks about in verse 19. He says the acts of the sinful nature, remember sinful nature, that's the flesh, that's the self. He said this is what a society will look like when it's out of control. They're obvious. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. He says, you won't even get into the kingdom of God if you live like that. So he said, I mean, don't take my word for it. I mean, just take a few of those things he talks about. Let me just ask you. Would you agree with me that there is plenty of sexual immorality and impurity and debauchery in our culture today? Would you say we got enough of that going around? Would you agree that idolatry is a problem in our culture? Would you agree that fits of rage, selfish ambition, how about factions? You know what we're told, everybody that comes to Washington, D.C., what do they say? We need bipartisanship. We just need, we don't need Democrats, we don't need Republicans, we don't need this faction, we just need, we got factions, drunkenness, orgies. And all I'm saying is what Paul is saying. You will never control yourself until you confront yourself as a problem. Until you get up every morning and say, I have met the enemy and the enemy is me. I am my biggest problem. Today, I've got to get myself under control. And until you get up every morning and realize that self is really something that must be brought under control on a daily basis, you will not control self. Self will control you. And so Paul is simply telling us every morning when you get up, the first thing you got to do is you got to say, okay, I know I've got a problem. It's called me. And so let's just get this straight right now. You are not going to control me. I'm going to control you. You're not going to call the shots. I'm going to call the shots. Now, once you're willing to recognize that self is a problem, and once you're willing to step up and stand up to self as a problem, then you take the second step. And this is why I love God's word, because you never get this from any other source. Second step you have to take is you have to crucify yourself. Now, that's not what a counselor would tell you. That is not what a psychologist would tell you. You know what a psychologist would tell you? Coddle yourself. Indulge yourself. You know, just go out and just any fantasy you want to have, just fulfill it. That's not what the Word of God says. Verse 24, those who belong to Jesus Christ have crucified the sinful nature with its passions and its desires. He says, look, this is a very fresh look at self. Paul says something that's, I mean, it is fascinating to me. We would have never thought this up on our own. Here's what Paul said. Paul said, if you know there's a part of your life out of control, and the reason why the part of your life is out of control the way it is because self's controlling you instead of you controlling self, he said there's only one way you can get a handle on that problem. The way to do it is not to say, all right, start today, I'll get a handle on the problem. Paul says what you have to do is you have to get a hammer, you have to get some nails, and you have to get a plank, and you got to nail yourself to the cross. You have to literally crucify yourself. You have got to die to self, because the only way that self will die is by crucifixion. That's the only way. And by the way, let me just tell you something right now. You probably already know. It's not easy to kill self. Self does not die easy. Self dies very hard. Someone put it this way. The last enemy destroyed in the believer is self. It dies hard. It will make any concessions if allowed to live. Self will permit the believer to do anything, give anything, sacrifice anything, suffer anything, be anything, go anywhere, take any liberties, bear any crosses, afflict soul and body to any degree, anything if it can only live. You know why that's true? Do you know what we enjoy the most? What we enjoy the most is giving ourselves things that we enjoy the most. That's what we enjoy the most. That's why we give things that we enjoy the most to ourselves, because that's what we enjoy the most. And it goes against our very nature to kill the one thing that we enjoy the most, and that's us. We are our favorite charity. And you see, I really believe the real key to what Paul is saying is found in a verse about 3 chapters early in Galatians chapter 2, verse 21, one of my favorite verses in the Bible. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ. What do you mean I? Not the real him, but he said myself, my selfish desires, my flesh, the desire to look out for number one, the desire to get my thing, my way, and to do things my way. He said, I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live. It's the Spirit of Christ. It's the Spirit of God. It's Jesus Christ that lives in me. So let me paint this picture for you. This will really make it come home to you. I want you to imagine right now in your heart, there are two pieces of furniture. There's a throne and there's a cross. Now, this is true of everybody in this room. Right now, I'm talking about where you're sitting right now. This is true about you. Right now, in your heart, either Christ is on the throne and you are on the cross, or you are on the throne and Christ is on the cross. In other words, right now, I can tell every one of you exactly where you are in your life. Either you are dead to you and you're surrendered to Him, or you are dead to Him and you are surrendered to you. And self, let me tell you something. Self will always want the front row in the funeral. It will never want to be the corpse in the casket. You know, many times when I do a little premarital counseling, I always tell couples when I do premarital counseling, at the very end, I'll say, now, you know what needs to take place immediately after your wedding, right? They'll say, well, the honeymoon? I said, no, something's got to take place before the honeymoon. You mean the reception? No, something's got to take place before the reception. Oh, we ought to pay you. I said, well, that would be nice, but no, something before you even pay me. Well, what? I said, you need to have 2 funerals. What? Yeah, you need to have 2 funerals. Really? I look at the husband first because he's the leader in the home. I'll say, you need to die to you. And then I look at the wife to be and I'll say, you need to die to you. Because you, and I look at the husband, I'll say, you'll never put her before you until you die to you. And I'll look at her and I'll say, you'll never put him before you until you die to you. There has to be 2 funerals after that wedding. You die to each other. Now, the only way that will ever happen, the only way you'll really begin to get a control of those areas in your life where you're not in control and you know you're out of control, you've got to crucify yourself. You've got to literally say, whatever area that is, I'm going to give you some specifics in a minute, I'm going to die to that. I'm going to crucify that. I'm going to put that on the cross. Now, once you confront yourself and you admit, okay, I have a problem, it's called me. And once you're willing to do the hardest thing of all, and that is you get that hammer and you get that nail and you crucify that self, you die to all that. Then, third step, then you control yourself. Then you control yourself. Now, the Greek word for self-control literally means to dominate. So let me tell you what self-control is, or the opposite of self-control. Self-control is when you dominate self rather than letting self dominate you. Self-control is when you dominate self rather than self dominating you. Now you say, well, okay, how do you do that? You won't believe how simple this is. Look in verse 25. This is a step. He says, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Now watch this. This will be, I promise you, now I'm going to make it worth coming to church for today, besides all the donuts and all that stuff out there. You thought all of your life self-control is a work. And there's some of you right now, you've already thought about, Pastor, I've heard it, I got it. You don't have to beat me over the head anymore. I'm telling you, I'm going to take this area of my life and I'm going to get this area under control. I'm going to force myself. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to try harder. I'm going to get this self under control. That will last about 2 minutes. That will last till the first pack of M&M peanuts you come to. I'm just telling you. Listen. Self-control is not a work, it is a walk. Big difference. Self-control is not something you do for God, it's something God does through you. He says, if you'll walk in the Spirit, if you'll just be led by the Spirit, you will get under control. In other words, what he's saying is self-control. Self cannot be controlled from without. It can only be controlled from within. Self-control is really spirit control. That's really what it is. It's spirit control. And the way to self-control is surrender to the spirit control. And by the way, that really, if you want to know the difference between a follower of Jesus Christ and someone who is not a follower of Jesus Christ, this is the difference. If you are a follower of Jesus, if you're not a follower of Jesus Christ, self calls the shots in your life. You want to sleep with your girlfriend, you sleep with your girlfriend. You want to get drunk, you get drunk. You want to smoke pot, you'll smoke pot. You want to look at pornography, you'll look at pornography. You want to go see a dirty movie, you'll go see a dirty movie. You want to do this, that. You call the shots. But if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you say, no, the Spirit calls the shots. I want to do what the Spirit wants me to do. So, when it comes to the tongue, with the Spirit of God's help, we'll exercise verbal control. Will Rogers wisely said, Never miss a good chance to shut up. When it comes to our taste, we'll exercise portion control. With God's help, we can quit overeating. We can. I have found one of the greatest ways to exercise self-control in my life. I call it hit the pause button. And here's what I do. It may be a 3-second pause. It may be a 3-minute pause. It may be a 3-hour pause. It may be even a 3-day pause. But here's what I do. I stop and I'll take a quick assessment and I'll ask myself 2 questions. If I go through with this, if I eat this, if I say that, if I write that, if I mail that, what will be the consequences of that action? And then the second question I ask is, do I really want to suffer the consequences of that action, and are the consequences really worth the action? Yesterday, I went to a birthday party. One of our staff celebrated their 40th birthday. They had this unbelievable cake, chocolate on one side and vanilla on the other. I mean, every piece had chocolate and vanilla. I told her, I said, I want the biggest end piece you have with all the icing on it. They said, I thought you were watching the weight. I said, trust me, cut the biggest piece off. You know what I did? I ate one small piece, gave the rest of it to Teresa. She can handle it. I can't handle it. She's one of those ladies, Teresa's got that, Supergirl figure. She's whatever she wants, just, super beautiful. I can't do that. But here's my point. Now I ask myself, is it really worth this? Is it really worth that? Is it really worth what I'm about to do? I look back over my life. Can I be honest? Some of the greatest words are the ones I never spoke. Some of the greatest letters are the ones I never mailed. Some of the greatest actions are the ones I didn't take. So let me just remind you of this, and we'll close. None of this is possible. Love, joy, peace, patience, all not possible if you don't know Jesus Christ, period. Because until you come to the Son of God, His Spirit will not come in you. And until His Spirit comes in you, you may try to manufacture love, joy, peace, patience, and all that. It will just be manufactured. It'll be artificial, and people will see it for what it is, and it will not last. The reason why Jesus Christ died on the cross, was buried, and raised from the dead was so His Spirit could come and live in you, and His Spirit could live through you. So here's what I want to do. A church member sent this to me this past week. I read it and forgot about it years ago, and I thought it's so good when he sent it to me. I said, I got to close with this. It's an excerpt from a devotional by Max Lucado. I'm just going to read from it, and then we'll say amen. Listen to this. It's quiet. It's early. My coffee is hot. The sky is still black. The world's still asleep. The day is coming. In a few moments, the day will arrive. It will roar down the track with the rising of the sun. The stillness of the dawn will be exchanged for the noise of the day. The calm of solitude will be replaced by the pounding pace of the human race. The refuge of the early morning will be invaded by decisions to be made and deadlines to be met. For the next 12 hours, I will be exposed to the day's demands. It is now that I must make a choice. Because of Calvary, I'm free to choose, and so I choose. I choose love. No occasion justifies hatred. No injustice warrants bitterness. I choose love. Today, I will love God, and I'll love what God loves. I choose joy. I will invite God to be the God of my circumstances. I will refuse the temptation to be cynical or critical. I will refuse to be a lazy thinker. I will refuse to see people as anything less than human beings created by God, and I will refuse to see any problem as anything less than an opportunity to see God. I choose peace. I will live forgiven, and I will forgive so that I may live. I choose patience. I will overlook the inconveniences of the world. Instead of cursing the one who takes my place, I'll invite him to do so. Rather than complain that the wait is too long, I will thank God for a moment to pray. Instead of clenching my fist at new assignments, I will face them with joy and courage. I choose kindness. I will be kind to the poor, for they are alone, kind to the rich, for they are afraid, and kind to the unkind, because that's the way God has treated me. I choose goodness. I'll go without $1 before I take a dishonest one. I will be overlooked before I will boast. I will confess before I accuse. I choose goodness. I choose faithfulness. Today I will keep my promises. My debtors will not regret their trust. My associates will not question my word. My wife will not question my love. And my children will never fear that their father will not come home. I choose gentleness. Nothing is won by force. I choose to be gentle. If I raise my voice, may it be only in praise to God. If I clench my fist, may it only be in prayer to God. And if I make a demand, may it only be of myself. And I choose self-control. I'm a spiritual being. After this body is dead, my spirit will soar, and I refuse to let what will rot rule the eternal. I choose self-control. I will be drunk only by joy. I will be impassioned only by faith. I will be influenced only by God. I will be taught only by Christ. I choose self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. To these I commit my day. If I succeed, I will give thanks. If I fail, I will seek His grace. And then, when this day is done, I will place my head on my pillow and I will rest knowing I was everything that God wanted me to be.
Addiction, allowing something or someone to control you. Anyone can abandon personal responsibility. The wealthy, wise, poor, or hopeless. In your life, if you're convinced all things are not in moderation, call this number, 800-413-1131. We're here to help, and we want to pray with you. Tasty, T-A-S-T-Y, flavorful, having a good taste. Tasty, living the fruit of the Spirit. Dr. Merritt's sermon series, Tasty, 9 flavorful messages to help you succeed in love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Get this remarkable series at a remarkable price. 9 CDs for $40 or 9 DVDs for just $55 at touchinglives.org. Or call 1-800-413-1131. At Touching Lives, we are grateful for those who have partnered with us. With your prayers and financial support of this ministry, you can share in the joy of knowing that the good news of Jesus Christ is broadcast all over the world. Thank you.